All right, it's Thursday night. We are live here at the Craft Emporium. We got a big crowd here tonight, biggest crowd to date. I think this is about our 14th episode. By far the busiest the Craft Emporium has been. We are in the garage. Top of Ohio Radon presents In the Garage. Coach Mark Brunswick is with us. Coach Brunswick, have you had your radon tested?
Yes.
Did Paul Newland come test
What
your
is
radon?
radon?
Exactly. Well, we need to talk to you about something. Radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer, and you need to give Paul Newland and Top of Ohio Radon a call at 937-935-2806. He'll come out, test your radon levels, and let you know where you stand.
Paul, I got that number in my phone right now.
I know you know Paul Newland, right?
I sure do.
Great guy, great chieftain, great dude, great supporter. You probably had Tucker in class, maybe?
I sure do. Did.
Paul's a loyal listener. We definitely want to promote his business. That he had one, I know, this week where the levels were the highest ever. It was the equivalent of smoking 580 cigarettes a day.
Whoa.
And I know as great as that sounds, and it sounds like a lot of fun, it's not good for your lungs to smoke that kind of cigarette. So give Paul a call at Top of Ohio Radon. We are excited.
Paul, make sure you tell Tucker I said hello.
Tucker hopefully is listening as well. They're getting ready for the NFL draft. We're going to be giving them a call. They're watching closely what the Bengals are going to do. I know Coach Brunswick's watching what the Browns are going to do, find new and improved ways to screw it up.
Yes, and I don't even watch it anymore because I know it's going to happen.
You've given up.
I'm getting close. Getting close.
Yeah.
I hate to say that because I love my Browns, but man, oh man. Taking that chance on Watson and that whole mess, I don't know how we can survive anymore.
The Brunswicks are a longtime Browns family. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Used to have a season ticket. My brother had them. Strike, my brother Tom, had his own PSL.
Had a bus.
Yeah, had a bus, had everything. Brian, his son, had the bus. And we'd go up in the bus and so forth and tailgate in the Muni lot and so forth.
Your father, so that'll just segue us right into your history. You are born in the mid-'60s, 1965. I got you down here.
Oh,
You're turning 60 in June. Big one this year. Son of the legendary Lou Brunswick and Ann Brunswick. Your mother is still alive, still living right across the street from Coldwater's Park.
Yeah, Mom's still on the corner there, holding the fort down.
We had a comment on the site. I know you don't watch it, but Jay Keeley of West Liberty Salem said that he married a Coldwater girl, and I didn't realize that, and mentioned that he saw that your mom and dad, now, they didn't always live there, right?
No, the family first lived in St. Henry, and then Dad got the job at Coldwater, and then he had it all planned out when he did this. He wanted to make sure when he had his family, they were 45 steps to the baseball field. So anytime we came back and we said, we didn't get our practice in, Dad, he'd say, no, son, it's your fault because you only had 45 steps to get to the field and get your work in.
Gotcha. Now, you grew up on the corner there?
Right there.
Okay,
Yep.
I didn't realize that. So.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So you are one of 6 brothers and sisters, right?
One of 7.
One of 7.
7.
4 girls, 3 boys?
4 girls, 3 boys. There's Tom, better known as the Strike. Strike, if you're out there.
Legend.
Okay. There's Jeff, known as the Scoop. Okay. There's Jane. There's Mary. There's Carol. And then there's Amy.
So for kind of maybe interest to people that would possibly be listening to us, Tom was a really, really good baseball player, Strike. He's the oldest boy.
Yes.
He drafted by the Athletics.
Tommy got drafted in the 23rd round by the Philadelphia Phillies. His first roommate was Ryan Sandberg. And they were roommates for a long, I think that first year that Tom had. I think Tom was there a couple years with the Phillies, didn't work out. He made his hay. He made his good years with the Oakland Athletics, and had great years with them. Tom was just one of those guys that just played his role. He'd hit in a 2-hole. He'd be the first one to tell you, just solid at everything he did, but not necessarily real athletic and so forth. But got to play for the legendary Billy Martin.
Tom, when I met Tom, you are physically gifted. You're 6'3", 200 pounds in high school. Tom's a little more normal looking. He's 5 foot, 10. He's just a guy. And so he obviously got by on a lot of talent and grit.
Yeah, Tom was, I always refer to Tom as the ultimate minor league player. What got Tom where he was, and I'll just tell you, I struggled with the lifestyle. I struggled with professional lifestyle, hotel, on the road, this and that. Tom was better adversed for that, and through the years he made it up through Double A. Got on a spring training game. Story here, okay? Spring training game. Billy Martin.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he was the manager at that time for the A's. Well, Tom was on the big league club that given day. And so Billy was on a bender the night before. And so
one of many.
Yeah, one of many. And all of a sudden the next day they were playing terrible. And Billy's looking around, got a headache, got this, can't take it anymore. And he says, "Can anybody play around here?" And everybody was scared. Tom was way on the other end of the dugout. He said, "I can." He said, "Get him in there." And then Billy looked at the other assistant coach and says, "Who is that guy?"
Well, you've told me that story before, but and I could sit and listen to strike stories and your minor league stories all day. Your other brother, Jeff, is a longtime baseball guy, younger than you, right?
Correct.
Been at Defiance for a long time?
He's at Archbold High School. He's been at Archbold for a long time.
Your sister's boys play at Defiance.
Yes.
I got you.
Amy, Cody, and Brady were at Defiance High School. And my brother Jeff is the head baseball coach at Archbold. I think they're sitting maybe at 3-0, something like that now, getting started. He's in his second season. He's been a lifelong assistant coach there, and he does a great job with the kids.
Your sister Mary was married to longtime BHS Hall of Fame coach Greg Peitzmeyer. Most people that are interested in us already know that. Your other two sisters, did they have a baseball connection, kids?
Well, what's interesting and what was amazing about my dad is we had 7 kids, and he gave his time. Mom and Dad gave their time to all the kids. Tom played professionally. I played professionally. Jeff played at Wright State. My sister Carol was a gymnast at Bowling Green University.
I didn't know
State
that.
University. My sister Amy was too, and Jane actually was there too for a little bit. Then she came back and she had a really successful coaching career in gymnastics at Coldwater.
So athletes everywhere.
Well, we tried.
We kind of glazed over your dad, and in my notes, I started with him, and you and I have talked about this some recently. As I was looking up your dad, I knew he grew up in St. Henry. I didn't realize until I found that article that St. Henry was just a hotbed for players. 6 guys at one point playing professional baseball in the 1940s, I want to say, mid to late 40s. Your dad grows up in that system. He ends up playing pro ball with the Cubs. As a scout for the Twins, I didn't know that. Now, how long did that last?
He was a bird dog. He was a bird dog scout for the Twins. I forget his first name, but Taylor, Ricky Taylor. Ricky Taylor was the Twin scout, and he helped him a lot in the area and so forth. But going back to the hotbed, there were 6 to 7 guys, and let me tell you, they had their own fields. Like there was one field called Post Field, right behind Wally Post's house, Eddie Post. Eddie was actually, Wally's brother was actually a better player than Wally. But but Ed had to go to the service, and then in war broke his arm. and never was the same. He could really throw the baseball pretty well. And those two, and then my grandpa, my mom's dad was a scout for the Detroit Tigers. And in the back of their house was the first lighted field in the area on their farm. They created a field and they put lights to it and they hosted events there. They were the Bernards. My mom is a Bernard. And so they hosted events there. I mean, they even had the Barnstormers come through there. Kansas City Monarchs, everybody, all of them came through there. I mean, it was a big deal. It's in my dad's book.
Like some Field of Dreams stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned your dad's book. I bought the book. Don Hensley wrote that feels like about 10 years ago, maybe a little less.
And shout out to Donnie out there. If you're out there, buddy, great job on the book. It's still one of those heartwarming books that very simple and just tells the life of a person.
I remember, it's been a while since I read it, your dad served in Korea. Is that correct?
Served in Korea, correct.
And I remember there were some really interesting stories about his time there.
Yeah. What I try to take from my dad or anybody from that generation, Rick, is if you ever notice those people in that generation, the war generation, is how much they appreciate life with the less they have.
Yeah.
And they're so happy, they're so kind, they're so generous, and you know, they just love people. But over in Korea was interesting because my dad's brother, Cleet, was killed over there.
I knew that.
They buried him, and then time later, you know how the draft worked, they would get the next one in the family and so forth. Dad got the call. And then Dad went over there. Korea was cold. My mom was pregnant with Jane. Okay, when Dad left, okay, so when Jane was born, Dad was not around. And there's always, I don't know if I'm telling this right or whatever, but when Dad came back after his years, Jane come running up because of all the military guys came back in their suits. She ran to the wrong person because she really didn't know who her dad was.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah, it's hard to relate to that. Probably, yeah, something we all could think about a little bit. So your dad gets done with pro ball and he goes to Coldwater. Obviously Coldwater's, you know, not very far from St. Henry. Was there a reason he went to Coldwater, just an open job, or?
He got it. Paul Dobmeyer took a chance on this little St. Henry guy that loved the game of baseball, coming out of minor league ball. He played for the Cubs, and then I think they ended up becoming the Philadelphia A's. I might have that wrong, but Paul Dobmeyer was on the board at the school and took a chance on him. And Dad started in 1959 and went to 1993.
So he ends up winning a ton of games. He's very successful through the 60s, through the 70s, gets into the 80s, and that's when you show up. You're a senior class of 84, so you play for him, you know, 81, 82, 83, 84. You end up having some of your best teams during that era. You win back-to-back state titles in 83 and 84, and it occurred to me, he doesn't win a state title till his 24th year as a head coach. I mean,
Correct.
It feels like in today's culture, I think the coach would lose interest a lot of times. Like, hey, you know, I've done this. First of all, you don't see many guys do it that long. And then, you know, it took me this long. It's not going to happen. But he just keeps on hammering. And then he's been there 24 years, and he's still about to win 5 state titles. So he wins 5 from 24 to 30 some odd. Now, certainly you were a big part of that. Your junior year.
The direction and everything, the foundation as far as the desire to pursue a state title, that started with my brother Tom, Nick Sauer, and all those guys in that period of time. because we go to the state. I mean, Dad by 83, Dad has already been to the state. Let me see, 61, 72, 77. So before we went on that run, we were already in the state 3 times. Coldwater, during his time, went to the state 10 times. 10 times. Won at 5. So, then it came into the 80s, 83, 84. We had some nice players. I commend my teammates. Just great players. And then Jeff, my brother, was on the 87 state team that won it.
Also a state, yeah. Your junior year, as I read up on it, you played catcher. You didn't pitch much during the season. The paper claims that you won 8 games as a pitcher, 6 of them in the postseason. So that tells me you didn't play a whole lot more than 6 games in the postseason.
That was my senior year.
Okay.
My junior year, here's what was going on. The scouts were coming heavy. I mean, it was getting to the point. If you read in the book about my section in there, when my brother Jeff says, "Mark, you might want to take this call. This is the University of Miami." It was becoming cumbersome. I mean, I loved it, but man, there was people all over the place. So my junior year with the arm, my live arm and so forth, a lot of the scouts didn't think I could do it as a pitcher. So my junior year, I was the pitcher and won those 8 games. So the scouts wanted me with my frame to turn myself around and be a catcher. And be that catcher because of my release. My pop time got down to 179 as a catcher. So my senior year, I didn't pitch. I don't know. I can't remember, but I don't think I pitched one single regular season game.
Until the postseason. So your dad's just saving your arm at that point, saying, well, I know Mark can do it. I don't need to throw his arm out. I know he can turn it on when he needs to.
Yeah, but I will tell you, though, there's difference in your muscles and stuff. After that first one, though, it was a lot of, what was the icy hot back there?
Yeah.
Yeah, remember the old stick and all that?
Your junior year, you beat Urbana, so certainly a local. Now, Doug Rutan is gone by then, or he's a senior?
Doug's team won it in 1982.
So Urbana's going for back-to-back titles when you beat him.
Yes.
You beat him in 83.
Yes.
84, you beat Hamilton Baden in the finals.
Right.
You pitch, I believe, in both those games. Does that sound right? Was there any point in time where you thought you were going to be a pitcher in the minor leagues, in pro ball? Did you think you might be a pitcher at any point?
I struggled with it a little bit because catching is an absolute grind. It's a grind. And so you get beat up a lot, this and that. And I started to maybe second guess a little bit in regards to my position. I'll never forget going into Buddy Harrelson's office and saying, "Buddy, am I in the right spot?" I was my manager at that time. Am I in the right spot? Should I get back to pitching? At that time I was 90, 91, 92. That was pretty good. Today that's just average fastball. But, I did question that a little bit. But I embraced being a catcher. I'll never forget the conversation I had with Butch Hobson, Fred Wilpon, who was the owner of the Mets, Steve Shriver, who was the general manager, and Buddy Harrelson in the office. And they called me in after my first year. I had a really good first year, Rick, all-star team and stuff. And they called me in and said, "In 4 years, Mark, with your work ethic and what you have done after this first year, being our 3rd round pick, we want you to be the backup catcher to Gary Carter." And
he was a pretty good one.
Yeah, he was a great guy, great mentor. I had injuries in between there. That stuff didn't pan out. It was a little bit harder. I didn't quite make that transition of what they wanted. But
Do
going
they-
back to Gary Carter, one of the best human beings around.
Do they struggle to find catchers more than any other position?
Yes.
It's just
Yeah.
not something guys do. So you got pushed a little bit towards that.
Yeah.
And you were, the scouting report says you were defense was your specialty. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I was a guy that nobody really ran. I actually sort of got bored back there.
Where did was your dad a guy that could teach you a lot about catching?
My dad was a pitching guy. He was a great pitching coach. But what was so good about my dad is he was good with pitching, but he let other people do their job in coaching the other positions, like with defense and stuff like that. Tom would come back at times, and he would help us out, my brother Tom. So Tom would take care of the infielders a lot. The hitting part. I sort of learned a lot of that on my own at a young age. Today there's so many guys telling you got to hit this. All we did, I'll be honest with you, Rick, all we did was play wiffle ball in the backyard. We played it nonstop. We played it till the sun went down. And that's where I learned my swing.
And you played 3 sports. Did you play football all 4 years?
Not all 4 years, no.
You played when you were younger.
Yes.
And you played basketball all 4 years.
Oh, yeah, I love basketball.
I found that article. I know you saw it, and I posted on the site of you and Wayne Carter. Wayne has since passed, but was a Bellefontaine, really, really good basketball player at Bellefontaine. You were all Dayton Daily News, I want to say 1983, 1984. How serious did you take basketball? You played all 4 years.
I had a couple scholarships to play Division I basketball. I was that guy, Rick. You know me well enough that no matter what I did, I did it full go. That's why I'm probably 59 and all burnt out now. But it was all gas. Everything I did. I was in basketball. I never picked up a baseball one time. Never picked up a baseball. Never even thought about baseball. I was in season and loved basketball. Then when I was in baseball, it was all baseball. I wish we could get back to those days. It'll never happen.
Did you do anything beyond Acme? I know your dad was very big into the Acme scene.
Acme and Legion. Played Legion ball. There was no travel.
And I'm kind of ignorant to this. What is the difference between Legion and Acme? Just who's sponsoring it?
Sponsor plus with Acme, it's all your high school. Legion, you got different high school.
Coach Mossbarger has coached that Sydney. He's here tonight, Dalton Mossbarger.
Yes.
He's coached that Sydney Legion team. So that's So now what was your Legion outfit? Where was it out of?
St. Mary's.
Was that pretty competitive?
Yeah. We made it down to the state tournament a couple times. Yeah, we had some good teams.
Was your dad coaching that?
No, he just coached the Acme team.
He was, he spent a lifetime in that Acme stuff, and I know you did as well, obviously. So, as you're getting recruited, obviously, like a lot of people in your situation, you've got the college offers. You know that you're probably going to be drafted. They're telling you you're going to be drafted. You end up committing or signing with Wright State. Did you ever actually sign?
Let me take you through that.
Gotcha.
Okay. Well, my senior year, there wasn't a game where I didn't have, at that time, how many pro teams would have been at that time? 30 or 32? There's 32 now,
There's 32 now, and they've added the Marlins and the Rockies since.
Okay, let's say 28. There wasn't a game that went by my high school year that I didn't have 28 teams there. It was high intense. It was intense. Fun, but after a while, I still wanted to be a kid, And then colleges. Oh, my goodness gracious. I was fortunate enough that I had the upbringing to be able to become a pretty good baseball player. My 5 schools, full rides, were Ohio State, Miami, the U in Florida, Texas, Oklahoma State, and Arizona State. And then I still had some from Michigan. And then I had the Greg Nishwitz scholarship from Wright State, which was Ron's son who got killed in an electrical accident and so forth in the summer.
This a Coldwater guy?
This was this was Wright State.
It's their scholarship.
Yeah, Nish was the coach at Wright State at the time, and my brother Tom was the assistant coach at Wright State. One of the things I think you know about me, I'm pretty simple, probably too simple, and I was sort of a homebody. And my brother was there, and I strictly went to Wright State because I knew people, and my brother was there.
Yeah, and I was wondering that because we've talked many times about this kind of stuff, and I never remembered you talking about other schools. And it did seem funny that Wright State would be the choice, but obviously if your brother's there, that makes a big difference. So you had decided that if the draft status wasn't high enough, if the offer wasn't high enough, I am curious. I asked this to Ryan Lane when he was on. He's the only other person that is even close to being drafted as high as you. He was drafted, I believe, in the 8th round. How high did you think you might get drafted? Like, is there a time where you think I could be a top 10 pick, or I could be a first-round pick?
Well, anybody out there has to make sure you guys understand that times were so much different back then. Today, you can leave high school with NIL and this and that. You can be a millionaire leaving high school, okay? Now, back then, it was still good money, but it was so much simpler, okay? I was going to go in the first round. Tony Lucadello with the Philadelphia Phillies was going to take me in the first round. But the Phillies, as an organization, weren't as didn't have as much money as the Mets. So the Mets could bypass on me for 2 rounds and still get me in the third for this money. So I got passed up a little bit to the 3rd round. The Phillies were going to take me in the first, and Tony, I still to this day feel bad about it. When he told me, hey, we can take you in the first round at this amount, I said, Tony, I'm probably going to have to move on and so forth. And you know the story with Tony. Tony was a great friend of the family. He's the one that signed Tom. He's the one that signed my dad. Every Monday he would be in our house on his way back to Fostoria, checking in on the family and so forth. So we grew up with Tony. We grew up with that. But just the finances, the landscape, you could bypass on that and so forth. But
what are you doing draft day? Because I know it's different. You don't have a cell phone on your hip. Where are you at?
Well, I was waiting on a guy by the name of Jerry Hine. He was the local guy in town that knew everything. He was the radio guy and so forth. He'd be coming by the house every draft and say, Did you go? And, I even remember sitting out on the front porch looking at my brother saying, nobody wants me anymore. Nobody wants me anymore. We were just kidding around. But 55th player taken.
First pick in the 3rd round.
Yes.
Is that all one day?
That would have been, oh boy, I think I might have forgotten this. I think I found out day 2.
I took a look at, you mentioned that it's a different world. Had you played in 2024, so you were a senior last year and the same thing happened, your signing bonus would have been a little over $1 million. So, I know it wasn't $1 million, but, your whole life would change forever financially if you were in the same boat that you were in 1984. You'd never have to, kind of work another day in your life.
This is how simple it was because I didn't sign right away. I got drafted June 5th, the day after we won the state tournament somewhere. No, that was a couple days before we won the state tournament. Got drafted. Local homebody, oh boy, I don't know if I want to go. I better stay home. I might miss the community picnic at Coldwater, that kind of stuff and so forth. My wife, Gay, was my high school sweetheart at that time. Great lady. And I just, didn't know if I wanted to leave home. And so we kept haggling with Bob Wellman. Bob Wellman was my scout with the Mets, and he knew Tom from Double A ball because Ron was a manager in Double A ball when Tom was playing. So when Ron would come to the house every time, they would talk about stories about after the games where they would go to have a couple of cervezas and pops and stuff like that. Well, so Tom knew him, and finally, we're haggling. In today's world, Rick, we're haggling over $5,000.
Now, is your dad your agent?
We didn't have agents back there. Actually, my agent was my brother Tom.
Okay.
Because he was through the process. We didn't call anybody agents. I don't even know if we knew what an agent was back then. But Tom come in the room. He said, Ron, here's a 12-pack of Miller Lite. We're going to drink this and get this thing done tonight. What do you think about that? Ron said, I like that. Before you know it, it was done. And the next day I was flying out of Dayton going to Little Falls, New York.
Little Falls, New York. That's what I was going to ask you is how quickly that happens. So it happens the next day. They say, okay, you're ours. We own you. Get on out here. And you're starting to play ball relatively quick.
Yeah, and you get put in a hotel for 3 days on the Mets, and you got 3 days to find an apartment. And if you don't find an apartment in 3 days, you're paying for wherever you're at. So everybody scrambles, and some people will have 8 people in an apartment, that kind of stuff. It's a hard life.
You played 46 games, I believe, that summer, which is probably news to you. You bat 270 right off jump, which is pretty good, right, for a catcher, especially a catcher. And in those days, 270 when I was a kid.
Don't bring up too many of my stats.
Well, I only the favorable ones, but 270 in the early 80s. You were.
What's ironic too about this, and this is where my homesickness came into play a little bit, is that 270 a couple weeks before, my brother Tom would keep my stats. 0 for 2 this day, 1 for 3. He actually showed that to me about 2 months ago. Hey, Mark, here's the paper I'd always keep your stats on. And 2 weeks prior to that, I was hitting 302. I was really going to finish 300, but I wasn't used to the season. That's the thing people don't realize here, like in the NFL, coming out of college. You got to, not so much football, but like with baseball, you come out of college playing 70 games, you go into pro ball playing 140 some, and the dog days of August and September are brutal if you're not ready to handle it.
Is your family able? Where is Little Falls? Never heard of it.
Little Falls is right there on I-90. You take I-90 all the way through New York, through Syracuse, Rochester, Albany, Saratoga, on the way down to New York City, right there.
So it's a drive. It's 8, 9 hours.
Oh, yeah.
So was your family able to get up there much that summer?
Yeah, for the most part that summer, quite a bit. Probably quite a bit more than what they expected because Dad was probably tired of the $500 call phone bills from me and so forth,
And Gay's at home. You're not married yet. You're still just dating?
We're dating, and Gay would come up on those trips too.
And she's in school at that time?
Yeah, actually, let me think. Yeah, she's finishing up at Wright State, and she will already have, that's why she's retired now, and I'm still working, is by the time I started teaching, she already had 6 years in at Salina High School, or middle school.
So your next stop after Little Falls is Columbia, but I wasn't clear, did you get promoted to Columbia that first year, or was that the next year?
I got put the next year after that good first year, I was put on, this is how they do it back then. It's completely different now. Today they do it with all Royals and all that stuff. But my second year, they put me on the AAA roster. I got a AAA contract. That was my protection because they knew nobody was going to put me on their big league roster. So then you just caddy back to the teams. And so I was promoted to Columbia. Really enjoyed it. City's great, University of South Carolina. But that was when, my injuries a little bit, my personal life and stuff started to take effect a little bit, and it was it was
It was a place
it
that
was
Aaron got
harder.
hit by a foul ball.
Yeah, how about this? Little P, the 8 spot, just chimed in. Columbia, where I got hit by the foul ball. I got a story. Can I tell a story
You
about
can
him?
tell whatever you want.
Okay, well, we're taking batting practice, and Bud Harrelson's throwing BP. You know Buddy. Remember Buddy? Got in a fight with Pete at second base?
I don't know any of these people, but I am familiar, yes.
Okay, with Bud Harrelson. Well, all of a sudden, Little P and Big P, they can't come in without an entrance. So all of a sudden, Big P comes in there. He's got his muscle shirt on. He's got his everything, hanging out, looking good, looking like a football coach. All of a sudden, Aaron comes flying down the aisle.
He's got to be little.
And he falls. Yeah, he's little. I don't know. Aaron, give me how old
2
were
or 3
you?
years old. Because, yeah.
And he starts bawling like crazy. And Big P goes, "Hey, Mark, we'll be right back." The whole batting practice out there stopped because Little P was up there crying. He fell down the aisle. But he did get hit by that ball. No, you threw that ball, Aaron. You threw that ball and hit our roving scout in the back.
I found an article when you were in Columbia. It was written by the Columbia, News Sun or Columbia paper, and it was a piece on you. I'll share it with you at some point. You may not be familiar. It happened, and they interviewed you and talked about Tom McGraw. I can't find this Tom McGraw. You gave a bunch of credit for your hitting. But when I look him up, it doesn't appear that he was with the Mets during this time. So is this a guy that maybe I can't find on the internet?
No, it wasn't Sid Finch. Everything good? Okay. No, Tom McGraw was a guy that was a journeyman player for several teams. In the big leagues. He was our hitting coach. He was our roving hitting coach.
Had he played in the bigs?
He did, but he was now a coach. Him and Bake McBride. You might remember a Bake McBride. Okay. Tommy was so patient with me, taught me a lot of hitting. A lot of the stuff today that I use and help with kids is what I use from Tom. And years later, he was the hitting coach for the Houston Astros. So, when they were going big.
Well, that is him then, and I found him.
Yeah, that is.
So
Good man.
You end up having a really good season in '86. You bat 273. The article is about your resurgence, that you'd started slow, but then you really picked it up, and you talked about how Tom had really, you gave this guy a lot of credit in the story. And then I believe you're back there another year. Does that sound right? Like 87? Are you still?
87, I went to Lynchburg. And then
Virginia.
I got bumped back, sort of a demotion, and got bumped back to Columbia because they moved somebody on the roster ahead of me. So I was back and forth.
And you're starting to battle injuries at this point, right?
Yeah, battle injuries. And if I still wanted to be in pro ball, moving on in life, getting my degree, train. Ryan Lane would say the same thing. Ryan, if you're out there, you probably can feel these stories a little bit. But
Ryan talked about, and I don't want to interrupt you, but Ryan talked about how he was treated at different points in the road. Like there was times where he knew he was super valued. He was on the 40 man, which was a huge deal. And then he got hurt. And obviously that was more towards the end of his minor league career, and how he was approached changed. And he could tell, like, they no longer think that I'm going to make the big leagues. And the writing's a little bit on the wall at that point.
yeah, but Ryan had some great years now. And his is a dedication to him because when he was with the Twins, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, he was still learning how to hit. If you look at his averages and the wood bat and getting used to things and so forth from high school, you can see where you learn with your wood bat, and years go on, you get stronger. Well, Ryan was very valued by the Twins, but when he went to the Rangers and went into the Texas League and stuff, he put some numbers up, man. He put some serious numbers up and some power numbers.
I don't think there was any doubt he was going to make the big leagues. If he doesn't get hurt, I mean, there's just really no reason to believe he wasn't going to the.
But that happened with the Twins.
Yes,
The Rangers were after.
and I think, was it the Rangers? Yes, it was. But he was out in California, maybe.
Yes.
Where he put Sacramento. His AAA team was Sacramento, and he had a big year. Yeah, you're right. He batted like 300, but it's something I thought was interesting. He said that Double A is arguably more competitive than Triple A. He said Triple A sometimes is where those career journeymen go, which he said ironically he became one. When he was at Triple A, he was kind of done ascending, and they filled the roster there for rehab and stuff. And Double A was where the studs were.
But if you look at the minor league teams back then, they were all spaced out. Like the Twins might have some team over in California. Okay, so the Double A, that is correct. Double A were your prospects. Triple A were your journeyman guys. And usually the Triple A wasn't even close to your big league park. If you notice the strategy now, all Triple A parks are almost 3 hours.
Cincinnati and Louisville.
Park. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? So they can option them up.
They can get in a car and get there by this afternoon.
Yeah.
You decide what is the thought process where you say, okay, because you kind of stop mid-season there, it feels like, and I believe 87, is that right?
And I went home.
And you just said, I know that I've done enough. It's time to make a living.
Yeah,
And you're married at this point, right?
yeah, and I had my college. That's one thing I thank my dad for. Is I'll never forget some of my good friends that really threw a lot of things away. My dad and my brother Tom, when we all negotiated my money, it wasn't all up front. Back then, what we would do, we'd get it in installments because of taxes. But Dad made sure that the Mets, in writing, had a 4-year scholarship paid for me to get my 4-year degree. So regardless, I was guaranteed that money. Nobody could take that from me. But it had to go towards my education. And so I got my 4-year degree through the New York Mets.
So you knew all along that you would end up, barring you make the major leagues and, that kind of stuff, that you had your Wright State career coming in front of you. You come back, so you're probably 21, 22 years old at this time, and you just start going to Wright State full time.
Yeah. And I hooked up with H.H. Morgan and Joe Cola and some of those teams. Still
I've
played
seen some of that.
And
Your brother played for him too, didn't he?
yeah, and we won 2 national titles, amateur national titles. So it's pretty cool.
And that feels like that's one of those things that's kind of died off a little bit in recent years.
It's done.
That kind of amateur baseball. Toby Smith, who coached at Bellefontaine, West Liberty, he played for the Springfield Giants.
Correct.
Is that still a thing? And those were like basically paid for by companies, right?
Springfield Kings, and you got minor league teams now. You got college leagues now. Back when I played, there was no college leagues. There was no Crane Lake Mariners where college kids could play in the summertime. They had to get on one of these teams to play in the summer. That was their summer.
So I don't want to stick with it just because we'll be here forever, but I assume you start helping with Coldwater baseball.
Yeah.
You're around in that 87 season probably. Your dad had some other really good teams in the late 80s, early 90s. Don't they win it again in like 91?
87, I did not see my brother win it. I was still playing. I was still away. So I did not see that one. But like from 88 on to 93, I would help Dad out a lot.
And then you come to Bellefontaine in 95. So the 94-95 school year, how how much was that planned in advance? I mean, obviously your brother-in-law and your sister are here. You know, Greg Peitzmeyer by that point is fairly established as the head football coach. He's been the head coach for 6-7 years. He's been a teacher in the district for 14 years. You know, I think early 80s with Chuck Asher or for Chuck Asher. Did you know, like, was the Bell Fountain thing like a plan or just kind of fell in your lap?
No. What's ironic about that is probably one of the best baseball teams Fountain's ever had. It's the 1992 team with Ryan Lane and those guys. I wish I could have got a chance to coach them. They got beat in the regional finals. Tim Moran, rest in peace, Tim, um, was the coach. And that after that spring season, resigned, and it came open. And Heights got on it. The guy that was really big in all of it was Biff Roberts. Biff, Randy Schmidt, Greg St. Clair, all those guys, Mike, and P, Big P, the job came open, government job came open. And so it was sort of a perfect storm where I fit in there and, everything took off from there.
So you did miss Ryan Lane. Ryan Lane is a senior 93 grad, and actually Tim coached one more year after that.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. He had some good teams. That regional final team in 92 loses to, I want to say, Forest Hills, maybe Forest Park.
I forget.
In the regional final. And even the next year had a good team. So you come in 1994, 95. We actually have at least one of your players that's here tonight, Jeff Turner. Jeff is here just kind of as a no. Yeah, he's good. I didn't realize that Jeff, and I've known Jeff for a long time, I didn't realize that he was one of the star pitchers. He'd had a really good junior year, like 2-point-something ERA, and along with Jeremy Burry, you had some talent. You had some young talent too. You had a young Pat Schmidt, sophomore. Josh Bowser was a sophomore. Derek Anderson was a sophomore. Blake St. Clair. I mean, so you're coming in at the right time as far as, you got some guys to work with.
Adam Kinney's there.
Adam Kinney I had written down. So that's a nice job to walk into. They had gone 17-8 the year before, and you immediately light a flame. I didn't realize this, that you spent time your first season as the AP number 1 ranked team in the state.
About all year.
You're 17-3 deep in the season.
Yeah.
And had a hiccup against like Northwestern. You get like upset.
Is that what it was?
I think so. And you get and Jeff talked about it a little bit before the show. You kind of limp to the finish, and it cost you a CBC title. Your old buddy Tommy Randall scooped a league title from you at KR.
They were loaded. I mean, they those were some really good KR teams back then.
Well, and I had written this down, and it's a little bit ahead, but I feel like your heyday, which is really that 95 till certainly like 06, 07 was really the meat of your success. You had some good CBC teams. Tom Randall, Bob Brenning at Urbana for a long time. I know Indian Lake wasn't in the CBC that whole time, but Terry Middleton at Indian Lake had done a heck of a job. Doug Rutan at Ben Logan. I mean, you had some guys that are the best coach in their program's history. Later, it would be Bruce Cahill at Tip City. That's a little more later in your career. But it was no slouch. And
even Brad Beals at Northwestern.
And you're not always winning, and you won a lot of league titles. But, as I look through, there's times you're winning the district and you're not winning the league.
Correct.
So that tells you that, there's some really good baseball.
Really good coaches. Really good colleagues. I learned a lot from those guys, too. Bobby Brenning, Tom Rand were such good friends of my dad, so I was sort of coattailing off my dad with my relationship with them. So Doug Rutan just knew from 82 through Bob Brenning. We spoke about that. That 82 team might be one of the best teams ever in Ohio.
Well, Doug, and I'm going to eventually ask Doug to come on. Doug is one of the best athletes in this area. And honestly, you and Doug remind me a lot of each other. Obviously, you accomplished a little more on the high end, but Doug was a 3-sport guy.
Oh, yeah.
Was a big dude that could do anything. If you ever golfed with Doug, I I mean, he's just a dude that whatever he does, he's going to be successful.
Yep.
So you start having success right off jump. You start putting guys into college right off jump. And that's one thing that you were always known for is with your connections, with your experience, that you understood, kind of like your dad understood for you and your brother understood for you. You knew what they guys needed, what they needed to get better at, who they needed to work with, who they needed to talk to, and you start that almost immediately. I mean, Pat Schmidt is a sophomore your first year. He gets drafted as a senior. I think that's your first guy drafted.
Atlanta Braves.
So you get Pat Schmidt. You end up getting Chris Walden a few years after that, and then a few years after that, Tyler Melling.
Right.
You had 3 guys drafted. Division One, I actually didn't write it down, but I would guess it's well into the double figures.
It's roughly about 24. About 24. 24. I always have this little thing on my accomplishments. All my years, I've helped put roughly, with the help of a lot of people, put roughly 90 some kids in college or pro. 24 of them have been Division I athletes. And then I sort of combined all the money involved. It roughly comes out to about $350,000.
One of those guys is also here, Josh Wallace.
Yeah.
Josh Wallace, a 2006 VHS grad, got a scholarship to Valparaiso. Had a big career, had 3 big seasons at Valpo. I want to say Hauk.
Nate Hauk was
Hauk.
there. Nate was there. He went to Valparaiso. Sheck went to Valparaiso.
Earlier on, you got Blake St. Clair.
Walden went to Kentucky. Walden was so highly recruited. We had people at the games all over the place.
Gatorade National Player of the Year.
Yep.
Blake St. Clair goes to Indiana.
Blake goes to Indiana.
Brett Hatcher goes to Ohio State.
Brett goes to Ohio State. Brad Winter goes to Kent State. And look at this. This is I wear this shirt out. This is Derek Anderson's state team from Iowa. This is their shirt that they got when they went to the state. And so in remembrance of Derek, I wear this all the time.
Derek was a really accomplished coach out there.
Oh, he was, dynamite young man.
And that's Larry Anderson's son, correct?
Yes.
And Larry was the superintendent when I came to Bellefontaine in 2007. Then you also, a guy I always like to mention, I know he's listened before, is Dusty Hammond. Dusty Hammond's a guy that I think gets overlooked, but I couldn't believe when I looked at his OU stats. Like, he goes down to OU,
Dusty.
and he plays like in 175 games or something. He had a
Dusty,
career.
Dusty was a complete package.
You got a lot of support, I feel like I remember, from his dad, Steve.
Yeah, Steve was part of our coaching staff.
Steve was a really good player in the late 70s. That baseball stuff frustrates me, and I haven't talked to you about this, but the history is not very good in the newspapers. Like, when I go for football and basketball, I can find article after article. But outside of a few places, now the 90s when you're coaching, it's good. Mayday, they just didn't cover it the same way. And Ohio, like, there was no All-Ohio team until 1993.
Because we didn't have a media. The media didn't select it, so the coaches finally got together and did it for the kids. Because in football, basketball, it's all the media that selects all that.
Sometimes it feels like with baseball that there was such a long-standing tradition of, like, summer ball that high school kind of came along slower. Like, summer ball kind of dominated. Like, you talked about Legion. You know, and when your dad was in school, that kind of stuff was all people cared about.
Right.
High school's kind of secondary.
Right.
You see it with middle schools. We've talked about this before. Bellefontaine, I think we have a middle school baseball program now, but it still doesn't feel the same as like middle school football or middle school basketball. And I guess that's always been that kind of competition with Pony League and, Little League.
Yeah, I just, sort of the nature of the sport, too. Baseball, it's just, it's always a little bit of the nature of the sport being maybe second,
summer.
third fiddle to football.
And it's primarily played in the summer. And I've always argued, and not that my opinion matters, but if I ruled the world, high school baseball would not start in earnest until about right now.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't even try to play these games in late March. Play in the middle of April. Let that state finals be the weekend before July 4th. And play in some nice weather. I just think the one thing, and I'm a pitch coach now, me and Coach Wallace, he's our head coach.
Can you throw strikes?
Well, he's our pitcher, so I don't have to. I'm the outfield coach, and they don't hit it to the outfield that often, so we're good to go. But we got freezing rain on yesterday at practice. So try and explain to a 6-year-old that he's got to grind and get better in the freezing rain because we have a season coming up.
But that's when you go home.
It is. Actually, we came to the Craft Emporium. Even live. Are we live, Coach? We are live, but we've had some issues. It's like the second time we've had it. There is a bunch of people in here, a bunch of people for you. We got Doug Robb here. Doug probably graduated like the 06 era. You got Hunter Seiler. I think he's a little bit older than that. You got Dusty Pross. That goes back a little 06, 07. Josh Wallace, Dalton Mossbarger. Jeff Turner was here, and quite a few others. This is about as packed as it gets. And so if it's really loud, that's what we're dealing with. But that's a good thing. I don't want to talk forever, but we got to talk a little bit about the state semifinal. So you win a bunch of league titles. I didn't write it down. I think it's like 9 or 10. Quite a few district finals, and then you won 2 regional finals, and you played in quite a few others. Those state semifinal teams in 04 and 06, I mean, that run really, those 3 years, you go to the regional finals in between. What would you say, with all the success you had, what gets you through into the state tournament those 2 years as opposed to other teams that didn't get all the way through?
Truthfully, luck. I mean, I'll never forget what my dad said one time. Some of my lesser teams made it to the state tournament, and some of my best teams never made it out of the district.
The 83 team that you were on that won it,
right?
He says that in the article. He said, I've had other teams that were really good that deserved this, and it just didn't happen.
Yes. Number one's luck. And then number 2, you go with good people. You go with your players. Coaches are made by their people around them. Let's face it, hearts too. Winning and losing and this and that. Good teams are based on good people. Your kids, their commitment, their drive, their parents, the support of the school. The school was so good. It's just, there's so many intangibles that go into it that you just can't say one thing. But one thing I believe that a coach needs to do is not so much always the X's and O's. My dad wasn't necessarily an X's and O's guy. Relationships. It didn't care if you're 1 or 16 on the team. He loved you to death. And that's what I learned from him. Trent Deuce. Trent coaches at Vandalia Butler, just went into the Hall of Fame this past year. I'll never forget what he said. The biggest thing he learned from my dad, he played for Dad at Coldwater. He said, the biggest thing is I let my kids be themselves because that's what Coach Lou would always let them do.
Your dad had a saying, I feel like, from the book. Maybe it's the title of the book, Every Person Counts, or
Yes.
Something like that.
Everyone counts.
Everyone counts. And you coached at a time, certainly in the 90s, and maybe not quite as much towards the end of your tenure, where the school, Bellefontaine, was really successful in a lot of things. Your brother-in-law, Greg, had his best teams really from about when you came, 95 till about 02. That's his glory years. The basketball program slipped a little bit there for a minute, but that mid-90s was still really good, and the early 2000s was really good. You're going Will Collins into Dan Furlong. The track team was exceptional through some of their very best teams.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. I never thought about this. I would guess Bellefontaine track and baseball side by side could have stood tall with about anybody Because most schools are going to be good at one or the other.
Yeah, and a guy down the road, through the help of Cody,
Cody Sagres?
yeah, with the help of Cody, one of the guys to get on here. Cody, you're out there. Hello.
Cody's been on.
Get Larry Young on.
Yeah.
Larry's going in the Hall of Fame.
He's been inducted into the Bellefontaine Hall of
Going
Fame.
into, geez, I just saw it on Facebook. He's from Corey Rawson.
Yes.
What county is that?
Just,
They have a county Hall of Fame up there, and he's going
Hancock?
in. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Cody did mention that. Yeah, I didn't realize how long Larry had been coaching track. I knew he was the head football coach like 78, 79 through Chuck Asher there in the early 80s. But yeah, he's been with Ball Fountain Track since the late 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, the track program, I mean, if you had to pick a program to say what has been the most consistently successful, track's right there.
Oh, without a doubt.
And just the fact that you were able to be as successful as they were at the same time shows there was a lot of good athletes. Like you said, a lot of good families. I think sometimes when we're not as successful, certainly we maybe don't have the athletes, but we probably also don't have the families. And and maybe don't have the coaches. I mean, that's certainly part of it as well. Or we see turnover in our coaches.
Yeah.
You got a stretch of continuity there with you and Pikes. And then, so, you know, I don't even want to get into the whole picking out guys, and we've mentioned quite a few. You had a ton of good players. You also had some good coaches that stayed with you, and we kind of were hinting at that they were doing some of your bidding at the lower levels. I think baseball in particular, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like to me, football, I feel like as a football coach, if you give me an athlete and he's an 8th grader or freshman, I don't really care that he hasn't played football, but I don't think you can do that in baseball. I don't think you can show up your freshman year,
No, you can't.
never having picked up
You
a
can't.
bat.
You
So you
can't.
better have some guys, and you can't coach at all. You can do your summer camp. You always had that summer camp. I actually brought my nephew to your summer camp, Levi Reed, I want to say in like 1998 or 99. It's the first time I ever saw you. But you had some dudes that were coaching high point baseball, which that's not even a thing anymore.
Right.
And how were you able to get them in place?
When I did first come here, though, it was Coach Skelly and them were here, and Tim. I mean, the High Point stuff was really pretty set up. It was good.
Scully had started it.
Todd was a big part of High Point. It went back before that. I'm not quite all sure, but the programs were pretty good. I mean, we had tons of kids playing.
Didn't travel anywhere, just play each other, right?
No, and it was amazing.
You just got to
park, and it was packed. It was packed till 10 o'clock at night. You know, it's just the way it is now. Travel ball, everybody leaves, everybody goes here. It's just a different world. I'm just gonna say, I'm just so glad I grew up when I grew up.
Because we're never putting the genie back in the bottle. I mean, you can tell people till you're blue in the face that, hey, Mark Brunswick, who is drafted with the 55th overall pick, he did it this way and it worked. And they still will smile and nod and still do it their way. And it doesn't mean that, and I don't really have any strong opinions against one thing or the other, but certainly we live in a world where if you can't share it on Facebook, you can't commit to something, and I've got a bumper sticker now that's, it's not a thing. And, but high school sports are changing, and that's just
right.
So guys like us that sit around and think about the old days, I mean, I guess that's what we'll do.
My biggest thing, though, I just worry about the kids. I always say this, and I'm never going to change my mind on this. This is why a parent, this is why a coach, this is why a teacher are the 3 biggest people in mentoring young people along. They have to be the staple of bringing kids through high school. It starts with the family, and it goes through your teachers and coaches. But look at the way things are nowadays. A coach is really looked down on. Teachers are a side product, and parents are, you don't know where our function's at in our families, and kids get lost in the shuffle. Now you bring NIL and all this stuff in there, and you give 10 kids the hope that they're going to be the next big time player. One will make it big. Maybe 8 or 9 other ones think they are, take the chance, get lost in the shuffle, and then they're back on the streets.
Well, the one thing I always focus, and my son's only 6, so it's still early, but just, I truly, and I think everybody says this, but maybe they don't live it, I truly just want my son to love sports. And if he doesn't, so be it. But I hope that anything I do with him makes him love sports the way I love sports.
And the biggest thing, Coach, is just love your high school years.
Yeah.
Because truthfully, when everything's all said and done with, no matter what you achieve, go to Peyton Manning, go to all those guys. They will remember more in their high school days than they will in their professional days, guaranteed.
Well, I mean, we don't have to. You lived it. You're living proof that, if you had to choose, those days at Coldwater were the most, foundational to your career. We try to keep it close to an hour here. I know we could talk for a lot longer. We didn't even get to the fact that I used to live with you for 30 days. You're the first guest I've had that I've been a roommate with.
You snored really loud.
I did not snore really loud, but I always tell people the story. So I lived with Coach Brunswick because
2-hour delay.
No, it's worse than that. My wife and I sold our house, and we had the typical 30-day window where we were moving into a new house, and we had to get out of our old house. And so you were the only person I knew that would let me move into their basement. And I was thinking, like, how awkward this is going to be. And the very first night I stayed at your house, on a Sunday night, you woke me up at 5:30 in the morning, standing at the edge of my wife and I, and you said, "Hey, Chief, school's canceled." It was October 30th, so school had no business being canceled. But it was because of water main break.
Yeah.
And, some of the best weeks of our life. You got Rob Bruns here.
Robbie Bruns out there, buddy, giving you a shout out. I see the post up here.
Now you played
Still
with
got
Rob.
that old Coldwater Lou Brunswick hat up there in the corner. What's amazing, that's what's cool about Coldwater, is everybody always wants to change things up and look fancy and this and that. Every kid in town rides their bike with that little old C on their hat, black hat, never changes because they believe in tradition for years and years and years and years. And the kids believe that because they don't want to be the team. They don't want to be the team to let it down.
Well, we got an up-close personal look at it for a couple years in football. It was a really thrill for me when we scheduled that game to go over there and coach at Coldwater and then have them come to our place. Unfortunately, we weren't able to win either game, but they were good games. They were fun. Those were some good teams, and certainly Chip Otten does a good job, and his guys. I've always liked Coldwater. When I was the wrestling coach, we used to talk about Coach Schmidt, right?
Coach Schmidt, Robbie.
Rob Schmidt always did a good job. Those Coldwater guys are, like you said, in baseball. They weren't the most talented guys, but they were tough. They'd wrestle hard. They'd fight for positions. So I always a ton of respect for everything they've done.
True brotherhood.
So we're going to wrap it up here. You're going to get back with your guys here. They're getting real loose over here. We still got
one last thing.
I gotcha.
Got me? Okay. I just want to end it in thanking my guys that came here. All the guys that are in here. Obviously coaches get a lot of credit or this and that for things. It's really not that. It's really not that. The biggest thing that I'm proud of, not so much even a coach, but a teacher, is staying true to myself and being a big mentor in people's lives. You talk about state titles, you talk about wins, you talk about this, all that stuff's fleeting in life. But when you stay true to who you are and you bring kids along and you become a mentor, you become a father figure, you become those type people to kids, they come back like they did tonight. It just shows that maybe you did a couple things right in life. And, people are special. And it takes a lot of people around you that give you opportunities and platforms to be a part of. So nobody can do it by themselves. And it takes a village, as they like to say. but Bellefontaine will always be a special place in my heart. And, it's good. Biggest thing I say about future coaches out there, if you're in it for wins, please get out. Please get out. If you're in it to make kids grow, that will help them win, stay in it. Stay in it. Just remember those things.
I can't say anything to add any value to that except that next Thursday we'll have a good friend of yours, Don Hensley, is the guest. Don is a longtime Bellefontaine sports editor for the Bellefontaine Examiner. Is now retired, moved on to Honda for quite a few years, but he's a huge local sports fan. He's the author of Lou Brunswick's book. So excited to spend some time with him. We'll talk about kind of that similar era, the 1990s.
Oh, Donnie will have you cracking up next week.
He always does. I always want to thank Paul Newland, top of Ohio Radon. Give Paul a call. Like I said, he's had a busy week here. He's finding radon everywhere. Don't be a sucker and have radon levels. Always thank Brian Harmon.
Tucker, you out there.
Hoyt Buckingham. We always thank Hoyt. We know we're having internet issues. I don't think we know how to fix them other than we need better broadband. We're going to have to start hardwiring, and we'll let Hoyt figure out what that is. But we'll be back next Thursday, 7 o'clock. See you next time.